righty. Happy Thursday as I'm recording this. It's super wicked hot here in New York City, so I have the air conditioning on, the door closed for privacy, and the fan going. So if there's some background hums, I apologize, but today is the day where you don't want to go too long without the air on, at least if you're not a lava lizard or something similar. Taking a little break from Dune, kind of, because I was really intrigued. I really enjoyed the traits system. I like it. I wonder if some people it's gonna, because it does remind me of something like in Power of the Apocalypse, or at least my recollections. That idea of tagging things. I always think of those kinds of systems, but you do see it in the OSR space. Hey, Ian, you do see it in the OSR space, but most of you see it around tagging weapons. Like, oh, okay, this weapon is has reach, and so you tag it with reach, or this. I don't even know what it would be. This weapon's blunt, or this weapon's whatever, or sometimes magic is tagged with different domains or schools, things like that. I really like this idea of this traits, not only traits applying to a particular character, but also to a location or an encounter. It reminds me a little bit, but not quite, of Index Card RPG. Index Card RPG will have a difficulty challenge level that's set for, it could be a room, could be a whole dungeon, and everything just kind of feeds off that number. Conceptually, I don't love that that much for my own reasons. I know a lot of people dig it, and I totally understand how it can simplify things greatly. But I haven't played it. I haven't played it or run it, right? So this is just my first impulse. On the other hand, though, the idea of tagging a location or an event, or having some of these traits in play that kind of are ways for the fiction to merge in with the mechanics, or join with the mechanics, I'm really interested in. What you're looking at the blog post, I actually saw this the other day before we read the traits stuff. And I thought it was interesting for a few reasons. But then I also was thinking about it. It's like, well, it's kind of a good maybe use case for traits. So let me read this first. This is from the Lonely Star blog, and I will put the link in the chat, and I'll also add it. I meant to add it in before I in the description, but I forgot. Okay, see that. Lonely Star. This is published just the other day. Let's see. NPC attitude, or why social roles bother me so much sometimes. I've been thinking about social roles recently and wondering why they bother me so much sometimes. I've arrived at the conclusion that it boils down to NPC attitude, and DMs, myself included, failing to take it into consideration. I'll give two examples from a former Pendragon campaign. So this is not strictly OSR, though I feel like these things can come up in OSR games, or in any. I don't think it's really game dependent, but just for context. Boy, my voice is going again. Let me take a swig of water here for the working man. But just for context, this is from Pendragon. In the first situation, my character was about to talk to Queen Guinevere, most beautiful of all women in the kingdom. So the DM asked for a courtesy roll for me to approach her, showing the proper etiquette. I failed the roll, and so my character approached it in a particularly blunt way, making Guinevere pissed off at them. In the second situation, my character was about to talk to his own liege lord, to whom he had pledged his loyalty, and the DM asked for a courtesy roll because this was in public. I failed this roll, and the liege lord got pissed off at him. The attitude wasn't taken into consideration. The fact that one was a complete stranger while the other was my own lord, even if we weren't close and he had reason to be angry, had no bearing in the DM's decision. This is because to the DM, the roll was a binary affair. A courtesy roll is made to avoid angering nobles, was the rationale, and so it didn't matter who the noble was. The consequence of this is that players end up feeling like walking on eggshells throughout all of their interactions with NPCs. It makes the players feel like they have something to prove constantly. In real life, people very often want to like you or talking to you. It's an a-hole move to put someone on the spot and wait for them to entertain you. And DMs often forget this, which sucks the whole fun out of a possibly interesting social encounter. So next time your players fail a social roll, ask yourself, what does this PC want out of the interaction? Even if they're complete strangers, most NPCs want to preserve some semblance of cordiality and will just silently lose a bit of respect for the PCs for saying something dumb. Meanwhile, a simple roll won't change the mind of someone who's just mean and hates the PC's guts. And if you're a player, make sure to remind your DM that you feel like this NPC should be a little more or less permissible to their failing. Either way, don't stay quiet like I did back then and discuss with your players or your DM whenever something like this comes up. So it's an interesting situation. Now, this particular thing won't often come up in an OSR game because we don't have courtesy rolls in most OSR games. But I think there is sometimes this idea of the GM essentially pushing a roll out there and nothing's even happened yet. Like, I haven't even gotten up to Guinevere and like, okay, ask for a courtesy roll. It's really what you're doing when you're putting it out there is you're basically asking the player to fail before they've even gotten to do the thing, right? Before the player's even gotten to Guinevere and to open his mouth or to say something, their mouth to say something. Oh, nope, you failed. So you're bumbling around, which can feel kind of capricious. And it is, remember, we're using D20s here. It can be very swingy. And of course, that crit fail is sitting there with a 5% flat chance of happening. If you're using crit fails, you don't have to, but lots of folks do. Then that gives you even more of a 5% chance to just totally do something goofy, and you haven't really done anything yet. There are obviously solutions that don't include doing anything, such as how about you just wait and see a little bit. And of course, the other thing is, which is not really covered in this, is the attitude isn't necessarily in the, you can have the binary and still have the attitude part, right? You can have the, well, now my liege lord is angry at me, but what that anger looks like, how angry is it, what the flavor of it should be colored by the fact that they're your liege lord and they know you and maybe they now think you're a goof, but they don't think that you're a horrible person. Whereas Guinevere, who doesn't know you, now you've done this big goof, whatever, that anger, it both results come up angry, but context means that the angry in case number one with the queen who doesn't know you at all, and this is whatever, is going to be much different than the anger of your liege lord who does know you, something like, whatever. We don't get any of that from the example. We can just assume that basically both things kind of played out exactly the same. So that can also be a problem. Frederick says a lot of GMs go into it with the attitude that the players will fail or succeed no matter what. Yes, that's true too, right? We could do that. So, but what I thought was interesting was when I'm reading this, and obviously I've read Pendragon or bits of it, most of it off and on, been a long time. What I was reminded of reading this again was those traits, and we looked at the example. I think it was from yesterday. Either yesterday or last week. So I think it was from the last stream on Dune. I guess stream 4, of Dune. The example they had of there being a gathering, which would be similar to this, and that the gathering had a trait associated with it, and that trait sort of gives some flavor to this gathering. I think it was either amicable or something of that nature, friendly, something like that. And then you had this NPC, and the NPC that the character was wanting to talk to the NPC, and the NPC had a trait, I think distrusting something or wary, something like that. And we can go look at the book exactly. It's not super important. And so what happens is and this is very open in that game, which is kind of looking at it sort of from the OSR lens of, well, oftentimes we don't want to make those things open. It's almost a philosophical thing. It's like, are all your traps exposed and open? And then it's a different, or are they hidden, you have to find them, right? And you could make that same argument with traits. Would you want traits to just be open? Then, hey, you enter the, you go into the hall and it's a gathering, and I'm just going to tell you it's amicable. Or would you make the players do something? I'm not sure. I think if we're going to use a trait system, it's probably a lot of its usefulness would go away or become obfuscated if you had to fumble about trying to figure out the trait. But in any case, you can use these traits to flavor the location, the situation, and also the people. So if we were going to take the example of Queen Guinevere, that maybe Queen Guinevere has a trait, I'm not sure, like what would it be, like maybe haughty or formal? Maybe formal is one. And so when the player is approaching Guinevere, instead of the GM going courtesy roll, the GM could instead, now of course the GM could do things differently regardless, right? But I'm using their example. Instead of the GM saying courtesy roll, the GM could say, well, if you want to approach Guinevere, this is and maybe the tag for this event is formal. This is a formal gathering, and she is very, what would be the word? She's traditional. She's very traditional. And then the player can try to work on those traits. And then that's where something like courtesy, well, my player is very knowledgeable in the courtesies of the realm. Therefore, they are going to try to use their courtesies in this form. Right? Like, you kind of build your argument. It's number one, it's not just kind of a random roll this thing, but you get the opportunity to approach it. And the benefits of that having the opportunity is maybe you can do something against the grain. When the example is given, it's just courtesy. You have it or you don't. And if you don't, oh well. If you've got it, great. But it doesn't really give any space to be unconventional. And maybe in a Pendragon campaign, you can't, in that sense, there's not an unconventional thing to do. That's just not part of that game. Part of the game, at least my imagining of that, is in the court is you're going to have to be conventional, right? Or maybe you could figure something else out, but that's kind of it is what it is. Whereas in a different kind of game, we go, well, wait a minute, what if I want to play things? Maybe the paladin, who is very much the courteous person, can use courtesy, but I'm something different. I'm going to show. I want to impress the queen by doing something kind of against the grain. I want to go off the wall. I want to go off the reservation. And I think my gamble's going to pay off. You're allowed to. It's not just you kind of failed, right? So I was thinking about the thing. So that's kind of what got me started. That's kind of my starting point. And maybe I'll let me copy and paste some of these, or at least this one. I did set up my Ouija board already with a little bit because I feel like, especially for the lens of social actions, I think, can I just paste that in? Will it let me? It will. Okay. And there are some other things here that are interesting, right? So if we look at kind of thing with traits, maybe let me make a box here. Let's make a box. Okay, so let's see traits. I'm just going to ask some, let's just ask some questions, basically. Okay, let's make a list. All right. Are traits known? And I'm saying to the player, and I think the answer is just put yes. I had something else. What was I going to say? I had something. Oh, yeah, kind of. Are traits known to the NPC? So here's something I was thinking about, right? I'm going to use, I think this could be useful for a few different things, but I'm going to concentrate for the moment on the social part of it. We're going to use this as kind of the lens right now. I'm always looking at, well, what are we doing? Like, if we were going to kind of integrate some kind of traits system, kind of what are we driving? What's the gain? Why do this, right? I'd like to use that phrase, is the juice worth the squeeze? Well, what is the juice? So the juice is something that I always appreciate, but I've never seen mechanized in a particularly meaningful or good way, I would say. I haven't read everything under the sun, and I'm not trying to make any, value statements. I just haven't seen one that maybe suited me. And that's kind of the idea of renown. This idea that your PC or anybody really is known. Whoops. How about renown? There you go. How well the character is known, and then what they are known for. Now, if you followed the Dune stream, they had, I forget what they called it, but they basically had something like your projected image, kind of basically what people see you as, or how do people know you, and you could set that at the beginning. And presumably over time that will change. I don't know if we got that far. I just don't recall exactly if it's how fluid it is in terms of gameplay. But you might start off and you're known as honorable. And that's kind of something you've chosen for yourself. And then it's a matter of how you stick up for it. And they have several different things because they have those drive statements. So they really get into your personality profile. But this concept of when someone just sees you on the street, kind of what do they know you as? That idea of renown. Oftentimes, I feel like with the systems I've seen, and somebody let me know in the chat if you know you've seen some different renown or famousness or whatever kind of skills, is they tend to be just numerical measures, right? Oh, your renown goes from 0 to 100, and then if somebody, we roll that number maybe, and if you hit your number below or over whatever, like, okay, I guess if it's 0 from 100, if they roll underneath your number, then this individual's heard of you, and that can, whatever, they know of you. They know of you. But a lot of times the systems don't really get into, well, what do they know? Okay, they've heard of me, or they've gotten word of my exploits, but what exactly do they know? What are the things that I'm known by? And those can be your traits. And maybe we wouldn't call them traits for you, but I don't know if we call it something else, or traits, known traits. I'm not sure, but those are your, for lack of a better word, these are your player traits, or your character traits. Literally your character traits, right? What do they know about you? And this is stuff like, I would think we'd want to be kind of fairly, archetypal stuff, right? This is the things, we're not getting into details. And this maybe I think it will help, right? There can be some specificity that we can sort of, I guess we can kind of abstract over some of that stuff. I'm not worried about, well, I think I'm more worried about them knowing that you're a hero or a good warrior than them remembering, oh yeah, you from the Battle of Bloobly Blue. Now maybe they do, and if I remember that as a GM, I could kind of feed it in there. It's like, oh, your exploits in that particular battle. But for the purposes of the mechanics and stuff, it's probably more important that you have some very simple character statement, or even just kind of a simple descriptor, right? Simple descriptor or character. I don't even know if statement, maybe phrase. So we're looking at stuff like, could be, honest, or, dishonest, brave, or, fearsome, or maybe just fearsome, right? Great, warrior, wise, mysterious, kind of, etc. And then, now, I don't know how you would get these in a game. I mean, I think that's going to be one of the things we probably have to figure out, how one goes about getting these descriptors, because I would imagine you kind of start off with none. You're just, you're an ex-dirt farmer. You're an ex-dirt farmer. You don't have anything to go on, but you can gain them. Once you have them, then you can deploy them, or you have to overcome them, because they don't have to be positive. Hey, Terrence, what you were known for doesn't have to be positive, right? Brave. You can also have, cowardly, miserly, generous. And they don't have to be, and they could be kind of neutral. Mysterious isn't necessarily good or bad. I mean, maybe it shades towards the bad, but it doesn't have to be. You could be, mercurial could be one, where it's just like, okay, this person's, whatever, they are what they are. Or, learned. Doesn't mean you're good or bad, but you're learned. So someone might come after you. Someone might come to you, or you could come up to somebody and put on airs, whatever. So you pick up some traits. And then these traits can essentially help either overcome negative traits, or balance them out, or something you have to overcome. And I like the idea of that assets was also very interesting, because assets, in a way, the way it's termed, it's obviously, it has a sci-fi kind of modernist vibe, as opposed to something you might use in a fantasy game. What are your assets? But at the same time, it also, I think, highlights the fact that these are objects to be deployed, not just in terms of using them, but that they can be, they're in a sense bargaining chips, or the existence of one, right? An asset could be your domain if you're at kind of a domain level situation. And then being able to deploy that asset doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving it away, but you're sort of you're showing it, right? You're adding it to your thing. Like, oh, by the way, I've got that castle back there, right? And I got 50 men. So that maybe I'm using it to try to intimidate someone. You think you're big cheese. Well, I got 50 men half a day's ride away. What do you think about that? Right. Whatever that could be, right? You're adding that, you can kind of add that into the mix. So we're our I guess I'll put a question in there. Are traits on the NPC? I'm going to say yes, but we might need to. Do we need a mechanism? And then let's see. The question is how does a character, I'll put in capital, character gain traits? This to me, I feel like is the biggest question. Because obviously if you gain a positive trait, that's fine. I don't know if anybody's going to argue with, hey, you defeated the dragon, so you pick up the, it could be the dragon, dragon slayer trait. Because that's the other thing. Titles, all kinds of things can be traits, right? So that's one way, right? So we could ask about, through titles, which become traits, through rewards, and obviously we want to put in through deeds. So this maybe is the harder one. Might be that this is going to be the tougher one, I would imagine. What kind of deeds how are we doing through deeds? So let's go back to our scenario here, right? The character is about to talk to Queen Guinevere, the most beautiful of all women in the kingdom. And so the DM asks for a courtesy roll to approach, showing proper etiquette. They fail the roll, so they end up becoming blunt. I imagine the situation is that there's some kind of council or formal gathering, and that they obviously want something from the queen. So before, let me get it. Let me say. So we're sticking with social. So let's break some things out here, because I think it could be kind of important. Maybe not. I think we can boil down the social interactions, at least the ones that we're really assuming we want to role play out these, mechanize these social interactions. And oh yeah, by the way, like, I'm not saying we should use rules or have to. I'm fascinated by them. I'm very interested in them. There's nothing absolutely wrong with just playing it kind of by ear. I mean, games like I'm playing it and running, that's what we've done. We just kind of role play it out, right? But I think there are times when it can be useful to have some tools, or at least be open to them for various reasons. And sometimes you don't necessarily want to role play it out, or the player or someone else is not really comfortable going through the RP element of it, and then having some kind of mechanics when you get to that. Because I feel like the skills and those other mechanics really come in when you get to that point where there's still, you've role played it out, but there's still uncertainty that you need to solve for, or you've gotten to the limit of what everyone wants to role play. Like picking a lock. Maybe if you're a professional locksmith, or you're supremely interested in locksmithing and lock picking, you want to get into all the details of tumblers, whatever. But probably me as the GM, I don't. So we sort of boil it down and say, okay, you're going to pick the lock, and I don't know as much about that to make it interactive. And at some point, even if we were going to play it out, there's going to be that point where you're saying, oh, I click all the tumblers, and I'm saying, hey, not so fast. And so we're at this kind of impasse, and so we need to roll it out. You can have the same thing in a social interaction. And sometimes, especially when you're bargaining and things like that, it's helpful, because that's a difficult thing to do as a GM. And oftentimes it can end up just being kind of random chance. And so that's fine. I do it all the time. I think there's probably a good chance. So I'll say 65%, whatever. But sometimes it's also nice to be able to, I think, as a player, deploy things and understand how they work. And these systems do allow that in a way that kind of ye old nothing sometimes can be frustrating. But obviously everything's going to be completely, your miles may vary, your table, your whatnot. Getting back to this, I feel like there's several different, maybe 3 different types of social, kind of social interactions. mostly, right? One is, I would say, is gift giving. One party offers the other a gift with without immediate and direct strings attached, right? So it doesn't have to be a physical gift. It could totally be a information, which is often comes up. Hey, my king, oh king, I'd like to tell you what we found out. Great. You're hoping this will pay off probably down the line and maybe whatever, but you're not actually asking for something. You are just giving the information. Oh, king, we give this to you, but of course it could be a physical gift. Oh, king, we just want to, we're in your realm and we're new here and we're trying to make a good impression. So here, and right, if anything, I guess the strings attached are more in that making that good impression, right? You're not asking for anything direct in return. You're hoping just improve your standing, whatnot, right? You're right. Maybe you're improve your renown, or maybe you're trying to, maybe that can be a trait. Perhaps if the gift is of good, but you're not asking for anything, I guess, directly. You're not looking for like, hey, we're telling you this, so you give us that, right? You're not making it. But that is the next one, right? What I would say is called commerce. One party offers the other an exchange of I'm calling it goods or services. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but basically you're looking for something or want something back. Oh, king, we have information. If you'd like to hear that information, which we think is of high importance to you, then you need to pay us, right? That's what that is. But I would say here on the commerce thing, you're more or less looking for value for money or value to value. You're trying to get the highest value you can, but you're making an exchange where ideally, the idea is that you're paying, whoever's paying is paying market value, whatever you can get out of it, but it's an equal exchange. Let's see, is that right? Whoops. Ouija sometimes, thank you. And then I guess the last one would be favors. One party seeks a gift or favor from the other party. Okay. Let's call it gifts. Just to the bottom line. Does this make sense? Is there anything I'm missing? No, there's just kind of banter. I'm leaving aside sort of banter. All right. Oh, I just want to say hi. Okay. Hi. Right. This, to me, I mean, if you want to role play that for something, it's great. More power to you. But that's just kind of, I guess, free talk. It's you're not looking for anything. You're not looking to gain some kind of advantage. You're not looking to give some kind of advantage. You're just, you're just kind of freely. So if you just go in, you're like, oh, hey, king, what's up? And you guys just start shooting the breeze. That's kind of off to the side. That's basically under sort of everything else. But in terms of the things that maybe I'm looking to, I would say that I think could use being addressed, or that might be helpful to address. It would be these sorts of things. So if we take the situation again, we don't know what this character was trying to do. Maybe they were trying to give a gift. Maybe they were trying to essentially make an offer. I don't know. Maybe there's a better word than commerce. I don't know, deal making, exchange, right? But it's kind of an evenish exchange, right? And the other one's just going in for a favor. But these can all shade the difficulty of what you're doing. for example, if the guy's coming in to say hi to the queen and he's clumsy, but he's bearing her a beautiful gift, assuming he doesn't destroy the gift through being clumsy, maybe the clumsiness is going to be seen in a different way than if they're looking for a favor. Kind of thing. Let me start laying out a procedure here. Okay, so we've got a deny, do that. I hate when I do that. Garbage. Social procedure. Whoops. So 1. And I'm gonna assume this is kind of PC facing, right? We're talking about from the player's perspective. If it's NPC wants to approach the PC, we'd probably go through the same thing. But my focus right here is you're in some kind of social gathering, and the player character has a purpose, a social purpose for being there. What is it? So the PC, right? The character player establishes which character. Oh, sorry. I'll just call it NPC. Which NPC their PC wishes to engage with, and what type of social interaction it is. Okay, so you're at a royal. I don't know what would be a royal celebration. You were invited to the hall. You're trying to get in. You need to get close to the queen to ask her something. So the player would say, "Hey, my PC, Sir Fang, wants to needs a favor." Right? You don't have to say like needs a favor from Queen Guinevere. And that sets kind of the tone of what the door's open. I think that's my cat, but it seemed very Betty. I hope that's Betty. Otherwise, a little bit spooky. Anyway, you're setting the tone. You're saying, okay, what do I want? Who do I want to talk to? What do I want? What do I want to talk to them for? I put up this reaction thing. I was thinking I'm going to try to use it. So do I need to copy this? Can I paste it down here? I think I want to genericize that. All right, so we need to figure something out. So let's see. How can I do this? Maybe I want to put how do I want to do this? Okay. Let's see. So I'm just going to set some things up here. All right. So the referee establishes the, I guess, initial reaction of the NPC. And here's where I've been talking about traits, and then it may feel like I just set traits aside, but I haven't, because what we can look at those traits are modified by the NPC's traits, the PC's known traits, which might be everything, right? We haven't totally necessarily got that settled, and the location traits and the event. I know this is a lot of traits, but this is our first. Consider this draft 0. Consider this draft 0. All right, so let's say so instead of rolling a reaction, I think we'll all right. So we're going to start off with this procedure. We're going to start at 7. Start with a reaction of 7, which is essentially, right, uncertain, kind of neutral. For every positive location trait, raise the reaction by 1. So this might be if you're in a location that's positive to the NPC, right? So remember in the from Dune, the trait of the gathering was positive. Was actually, maybe we should do a different one. We're gonna start there. All right. I'm thinking of something. So we're gonna start with 7. So I think what we should do is probably the referee communicates to the player the positive and negative traits in play. Maybe that's better first. So we're going to start with 7. If there's a bunch of negative traits, we'll subtract them. But I think what we want to do is, I think we want to leave it up to the player first. I think what we want to do is like sum the traits, right? So the player can try to marshal the traits that they have to cancel out any negative ones, right? So the player negotiates to, in a sense, kind of spend their traits to either to improve or what's the word? To improve or overcome. No, to improve the reaction or overcome negative traits. All right. So, bird is the word, says Bohebo. All right, so let's work through this a little bit as we get here. I should probably where's that Guinevere examples? Let me put the example. I didn't really mean to. There we go. Let's use our example, or let's set up our example. Example. Okay. Sir Fang, who will have honorable but mysterious. Those are his two traits. Fang attends an audience of Queen Guinevere. All right, so those are his two traits. Her two traits are, I don't know, regal, but also reserved. And they'll just, castle, Camelot. Oh, I'll just put castle, Camelot, which can also have regal in there. So we got, and I obviously this is being draft 0. we're just hashing it out. That's right. It's only a model. He needs a favor from the queen. All right, so here we go. Here we go. Reserved, aloof. Yeah, aloof could be another one. Yeah, either one would work. I'll just keep reserved for now. But yeah, aloof. Audience. But the audience is kind of, a lot of people in the hall, blah, blah, blah. All right, great. Sir Fang says, hey, referee, Sir Fang is going to try to make his way to Queen Guinevere because he desperately needs to ask, needs a favor. He needs a favor that we need. And maybe Sir Fang, in this case, the party at large, maybe they weren't all invited. He was the only one because he's a fighter. Maybe he's a hero or something. So he was invited. No one else kind of made the list. So he's here kind of on behalf of the party. Great, great, good. Okay. That's kind of what he's going to do, right? So we know from what I'm trying to get here is we're trying to set up, in a way, we're trying to set up kind of the bounds and kind of, what's at stake and sort of the shape of this social interaction, which probably we should also put, I suppose the goal is also important. The type of and the goal. Is the goal reasonable and attainable? All right, so the goal should be something reasonable, attainable. This is not where you go in and you roll in and say, hey, Guinevere, give me the kingdom. And then she, you make some crazy roll. She goes, okay, just gets to you. No, not going to happen. He needs, let's see, what, maybe he needs, maybe something that's reasonable, right? He needs swift horses to make for, I don't know, a battle. A battle before it is too late. Or I guess the front lines before the big battle. Let's just do that, right? And he's asking on behalf of the party. So we just, not one horse, but, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7, we need your fastest horses, my queen, so we can get up to fight to get to Mordred, right? To link up with Arthur and defeat Mordred, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Okay. All good, all fine, all good. So that gives us step 1. Now, the reaction starts at 7, neutral. Well, I'm thinking it should start at 7, neutral. Now I'm second guessing myself. This is all a work in progress, so it's gonna be all right. Let's just start with let's not switch it up yet. We're gonna start with neutral for right now, and then if later on we need to amend it into something else, we can. So we're gonna start with neutral. If there are any negative traits, I guess maybe we do. So subtract 2 for every negative trait. Would that be too much? Not enough. I feel like I want to make it. I think it's always true. It's harder for most folks to impress upon them, right? So you're going to be punished more for your negative traits than you are for your positive traits, which I think is a nice carrot to get people to really give some oomph to the action. Okay, I got this reaction table here. What I want to do is make. I don't think I can make a table. I don't think there's a Ouija way to make a table, unfortunately. I don't think so. So here's what I'm going to do. The social reaction. Actually, let me hold on. Get rid of that. This is not for the new Pendragon. Just for any kind of game. Any kind of game. So what I'm doing right here is I'm taking the I'm taking these rolls, I'm turning them into kind of categories, right? Which is so what I want is basically I want to set up is that to get a favor, you need to score high, right? So 12 plus reaction for a substantial favor. I guess I'll just 9 to 11 reaction for a small favor. Six to 8 for. Oh, I should say minimum, right? Minimum. Or I guess I could just, I don't need the lower bounds, right? Or I don't need the upper bounds. Maybe I'll do it like, whoops. For commerce. And then one more. 3 reaction minimum for gifts given. Okay. So see if this makes sense. So what we're doing in the social situation is we're not going to just roll for random reaction. We're going to start off with neutral. And then we're going to look at, and now we could play with different numbers, right? We're starting neutral just in terms of right now, kind of, okay, well, we need to start somewhere. So we're just going to say we're starting with neutral. This might have to be tweaked. I really like the idea if you could track it, of keeping track of sort of where people are, but just in terms of maybe as a default saying, we're just going to start from neutral. And then, because you can also add a trait, right? If Sir Fang does something amazing, then you could add a trait that's beloved by Guinevere. And if he has beloved by Guinevere, then that's just going to pump it up. And so maybe you just have the player track it as those kinds of traits, which some may stay for a long time, some may go very quickly, whatever. But then the player just tracks it, and then it's up to them to say, oh, by the way, Sir Fang is beloved by Guinevere. And you go, okay, then that makes a big difference, right? Or, he's hated by Guinevere. Oh, that makes a big difference swinging the other way, kind of thing. But I think, and we don't need to use we're using the 2d6 model. We might need it, maybe 3 to 18 might make more sense. I don't know. My idea here is something like this would be probably the amount of traits we're talking about, more or less, maybe 1 or 2, or maybe 3 for a person, 2 or 3 for the NPC, maybe 1, maybe none if they're just nobody, and then maybe a couple for the 1 for the oh, you know what? I forgot. I'll add a trait for the place, right? So it's formal. Right? Something like that. So who knows how many there would be over time. My idea is you'd have kind of players might have a handful, but obviously they're not all going to be applicable. And NPCs might have one or two, you know, one, none to two, depending on kind of their, however they are, importance in the swing of things, because you're just trying to give them kind of a flavor. And then a location in an event might have one or maybe two, you know, something like that. So we're not we're not dealing with huge numbers. And the idea is that I think conceptually you'd start off, you'd kind of get kind of a sum, and you'd either end up in a positive place or a negative place, and then that would set your reaction where you are. Bo says maybe a first, fourth, seventh, and 10th, you get a new trait. That could be a way. You could definitely, right? We were talking about how to gain traits. Where did I? And because remember, traits can be good or bad. I feel like maybe through levels would be those title traits, because you could have fun. You know, they have the titles you get right in OD&D or in BX, something you're like, oh, now I mean, they're the big ones like your name level and then reaching hero for fighter, for example. And you could tie those in, right? He's a hero. That title becomes a trait. I'm a hero. I'm a patriarch. I'm a wizard. I'm a necromancer, right? Those things, you know, some of them you'd have to change. You'd have to alter the titles, because remember, back in the day, the titles were essentially just different names for the thing or different ways of doing it. So you become a necromancer as a wizard. It doesn't mean that you're suddenly dealing with dead and undead and things like that. It's the title, right? You probably want to rewrite the titles to be more meaningful. Maybe less titles and more degrees. Oh, I'm a third degree. Excuse me. I'm a third degree, whatever. And that kind of says something. But you know, I like that. That's kind of something that I like to channel. Say we give people titles, or at least in some editions we did. But outside of saying maybe as part of their name, I'm now hero Sir Fang the hero, it doesn't really mean much. I mean, maybe if you have, like, everybody knows that a hero is a great fighter and it's actually like a literal thing as opposed to just someone saying figuratively, I'm the hero, that's, I guess, sure. But here's a way that we can kind of somewhat mechanize them. So Sir Fang comes over. All right, so let's go back to our example. Let's keep working through the example. All right, so the referee sets Guinevere's starting morale at 7. They deem that Sir Fang's request is what did I call it? A minor favor. Minor favor, call it minor, and then there's major. Major favor is a minor favor. Minor favor. So the minimum final reaction must be at least, what did we say it was? 9. So not super horrible. Okay. So the morale 7. Sir Fang is requested a minor favor. Minimum is 9. In this, so that's where we're kind of starting. So now in terms of what our modifier, so we're gonna, because I think part of this is it has to be kind of open. So in this context, Sir Fang's mysterious, I guess, trait, just to be clear, trait of this, do all this, works against them. So there we have a negative. So we got a negative working out there. And also Guinevere's trait of reserved, makes her difficult to approach. So we got 2 negatives. Oops. The referee counts these as negative traits, reducing the morale to 3. Ouch. So we've got, because the mysterious guy showing up at court trying to muscle, come to get to see you, that's going to be a little bit creepy, right? Sometimes mysterious can be, ooh, I want to see what's going on over there. In this instance, the queen is not amused by mysterious. That's just kind of dangerous, right? You let the mysterious guy nobody seems to know come over to you, man of mystery, and that's where you get stabbed, poisoned, kidnapped, right? So she's not having that game. He's gonna have to overcome that part of it, and he is, he's her the fact that she's reserved, that she's aloof, also is a factor. She's kind of trying to sort of stay away from these interactions entirely, and he needs to break through that. So we got 2 negative traits, down to 3. 3's not going to cut it because he needs to get up to 9. So he needs 7. He needs 6 at least. So on Sir Fang, so the Sir Fang, let's see. So Sir Fang, what does Sir Fang do? So it is a formal. So I think Sir Fang decides to, let's see, to what's the word? To use the formal nature of the audience and Guinevere's regal nature. Actually, you know what? I think we shouldn't do the math until afterwards. Let's see how that works. So now Sir Fang decides to use the formal, I should just say, trait and regal trait to get a face-to-face. So Sir Fang's argument is that, hey, this is you're trying to dodge me. I know I'm a mysterious guy, and you're trying to dodge me, but this is an audience, and Sir Fang, husband of Lady Phyllis, could be. And hey, you're the queen. This is your audience. You're meant to talk to me. So now he's used the formal, he used the regal. Bam. And he's got honorable. So he's going to play will rely on his honorable trait to allay. I think that's no. How do you spell allay? There we go. Any suspicions? Ugh. Okay, so he's got it up to even. So we had no. So actually, he overcame the 2 negative traits. All right. Final. The referee tallies all of the traits and the result is one on the one positive in favor of Sir Fang. This raises the reaction to 8. But he's still one short. Still 1 point short. Okay. Sum the number of positive and negative traits if the result is negative, multiply it by 2 and subtract it from the reaction. If the result is positive, add some to the reaction. All right, we got that, which I think is fair, right? So you're not, if you leave a negative one hanging, that's tough because it's going to hit you harder. If you can get rid of it, though, you can get rid of it as on a one-to-one basis. So you really the extra punishment comes in if you leave it on the board. Hey, Sam, what is up indeed? So we started with 7. We did that jazz. Our example, Sir Fang, is still 1 short. So I think there ought to be something. So I need to do something else with this reaction table. We actually have some categories here, right? So 2 is I don't even know what the word is. Just I don't know. Hatred. I'm trying to find some more because using this for outside of combat, right? So hatred 3 to 5 is hostile. Indeed, traits. Kind of so it's probably easier if you end up going back and watching the front of the stream, Sam. But just I was inspired by the stuff from 2D20 that we've looked at, and then also this blog on a social kind of the failure of some social mechanics. So I'm just sort of noodling about with seeing if that kind of traits, some kind of similar trait system can maybe be useful. 6 to 8 is neutral. 9 to 11 is positive. 12 is enthusiastic. Okay. I need to find another word for hatred, but that's fine. So now I think there's a couple things. I do want to keep a die rolling, Hale. I do want to have a die roll. Because at the end of it, so there are a couple of options, right? Oops. Roll dice to move on table. I'm just kind of doing this. So we can use a 2d6 roll. 2d6 roll. On a 2, drop 2 categories, i.e. from neutral to, I call it hateful, to hateful. Adversarial. Thank you, Horga. That's a good one. I like that. Though hateful's kind of nice too. All right, so on a 2, you drop 2 categories. 3 to 5, drop one category. 6 to 8, stay the same. 9 to 11, gain 1 category. 12, gain 2 categories. Okay, so the idea here, the reason I'm writing this up, and let me move this example over a bit. So we have our Sir Fang. Sir Fang, as we ran through this example, 1 short. And what I like about this at the moment is there's a little bit of math in there. Okay, 7, whatever. But ultimately, it's a conversation with the GM. Hey, Sir Fang wants to talk to Guinevere. Great. Well, so you know, Sir Fang, Guinevere, she's reserved. She's holding back a bit. And the fact that you're mysterious means that she is almost actively avoiding you. And yes, I did say Sir Fang. So Sir Fang then gets, okay, we got these 2 things we have to overcome. The fact that I'm mysterious, which is making her a little bit wary of me, and the fact that she is reserved. Those 2 things are working against me. Okay, and I say, all right, but GM, right? This is a royal audience. I've mounted to 10. So I'm appealing to both the formality of the event that is all about audience, which means interacting with people, and also this is the fact that her as a regnal figure, I'm appealing to both these aspects, these traits, to essentially overcome the fact that she doesn't want to talk to anybody and specifically doesn't really want to talk to me. And the GM says, okay, great. And then Sir Fang goes, oh, and on top of it, Sir Fang is an honorable knight. And he's going to lean on that armor to parlay that to, work upon the queen to when he gets there, this honor is going to be important as he tries to make his plea for some fast horses so that he can go, do this thing. And maybe in an alternate game, we're not going to do this here, but in an alternate game, the GM may say your favor is kind of for the kingdom. So I'll give you a temporary trait of, I don't know, patriotic or whatever, something of that nature, heroic, right, for this, which would also be used. That's another. You could say, hey, because of what you're doing is evil, so it's noticeably selfish, let's say, which might work against you. In this case, hey, this is a heroic deed you're attempting to do that you need help with, so maybe that'll help. In this case, I'm not going to do that for this, but you could see in an alternate game, alternate table, this could go in many different directions. So we've done all that, and the GM's like, okay, great. Well, right now, she's not disinterested, she's not uninterested, she's not hostile to you, but she's not quite there yet. And we haven't rolled any dice yet. I've done a little math. I'm sure Sir Fang's player has done the math going, I feel I'm 1 short. At this point, he can make the dice. And I like this kind of like put on the player side. Hey, I'm gonna take a gamble and I'm just gonna go with it. You can look at it like, you know what, I'm gonna speak from the heart or whatever, and that just whatever comes out. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. It's essentially the same thing as the reaction, only I'm using the exact same kind of maths, same distribution, I should say. Either it helps or it hurts. Most likely it's not, but it could. The other thing you could do though is, I think, take a complication, right? I'll make that its own thing. Oops. No, hold on. Let's put this over here for a second. Take a complication. The character can move up 1 category by accepting a complication. Complication can take, any forms, but should pose let's see, but should act as an obstacle to the character in the future. I guess something like that, right? It should add as a complication. It doesn't have to be right now. So Sir Fang could roll the dice or take the complication. Okay, so Sir Fang decides to take a complication to move from neutral to positive and earn that minor favor from the queen. Still haven't really rolled any dice, which is what I like. We got some mechanics to back it up in case we need to roll dice because we want to roll dice, but in this case we're not. It's all just talking. The referee decides that the enemy has a spy in the audience, and Sir Fang's interaction with the queen was overheard and reported. Okay. And then ultimately what that means, maybe Sir Fang might be waylaid on the road, potentially someone might try to ambush him, maybe they'll send word back to the main forces at wherever this battle is supposed to be, and that will shape the battle. Who knows? Who knows what thing that takes? But what you have is just introduced and it could be even something different, right? It could be that whatever this obstacle is, maybe Sir Fang has enemies at court, or at least competitors, and this might not even be reflected in the battle or whatever is happening at the moment. Maybe later on it'll be used against them, right? It should be something that they kind of have. It makes it more complex, adds some kind of obstacle, but it doesn't have to be in that moment. It doesn't have to be something happens right then and there. It could be down the line, whatever, but it's kind of noted. What do you guys think? What dost thou think of this kind of thing? I mean, I haven't played it. Just running through the example. The things I like about it is we're keeping close to the fiction, right? The traits to me are things that arise out of the fiction and represent parts of the fiction, just kind of our shorthand for aspects of the character that have developed through our adventuring. Maybe some of them through titles, maybe some of them through levels, maybe some of them through things we've done, through rewards, all kinds of ways they could have gotten them, but we have them, and we're able to kind of have them in this kind of bullet point form, which makes it easy to access, and we can kind of build off some mechanics off of that. In this case, we're looking at kind of a social style mechanics. But the whole example we worked through, there was no dice rolling. We weren't doing anything else. I don't think the conversations would be completely different than if we didn't have this at all. But it would allow a player and a GM to kind of gauge the difficulty. Now, of course, these things are all, draft 0. So how the maths work, should I start at 7, maybe 6 is a better spot to do it, right above neutral. You could play with where this will start, maybe depending on the ongoing things. Obviously, you could start at different levels. I think that's fair, right? You could look at it and say, well, how does this NPC think about the player, and start it there? So someone might start at enthusiastic, but maybe if you actually do, there should be maybe some cost. Hey, by taking that favor, their overall reaction is kind of down, sort of thing. I don't know. There's some different ways we can think about the aftermath and the tracking bits. But I think just to run through the example one more time, just to kind of put a bow on it. So our example, Sir Fang, who has the traits of honorable and mysterious, attends an audience, which has the trait of formal, of Queen Guinevere, who has the traits of regal and reserved. And it takes place at Castle Camelot, which also has a trait of regal, which we didn't play up into, but maybe someone else would, or we could have a different, maybe capital, anything you could come up with there, right? Could fit in there. He needs a favor from the queen, swift horses to make for the front lines before the big battle. The referee sets Guinevere's starting morale at 7, and that's where we've been starting it, but we could figure out some different places to start if need be. They deem that Sir Fang's request is a minor favor, so the minimum final reaction must be 9. Right? We separated favors kind of into minor and major, and we thought that you have to at least have kind of a positive reaction to earn a minor favor. In this context, Sir Fang's trait of mysterious works against them. Guinevere's trait of reserved makes her difficult to approach. The referee counts these as 2 negative traits. So, right, that's what Sir Fang has to deal with. Out of the box, trying to get to the queen, he's got to overcome these 2 negative things. Sir Fang decides to use the formal trait of the audience and Guinevere's regal trait to get a face-to-face. In other words, Sir Fang is countering that by saying, this is a formal audience, so I'm kind of making a formal request to you, and you as the queen, this is kind of your duty, right? He's calling upon these things to kind of break through. And Sir Fang will also rely on his honorable trait to allay any suspicions. So he could say, listen, I'm gonna bring the horses back, whatever I'm gonna do, or I'm going to a battle, and you can believe what I say because I'm an honorable knight. The referee tallies all of the traits, and the result is 1 positive in favor of Sir Fang. This raises the reaction to 8. Sir Fang is still 1 point short. Sir Fang decides to take a complication to move from neutral to positive and earn that minor favor from the queen. So he was 1 short, so he couldn't quite get there. And, the 2d20 system has where you can take threat. That's kind of what we're doing here. The threat is kind of taking that complication. All right, we're saying, okay, I need that 1, so I'm going to take it, but I understand that by doing that, I'm going to unleash some new thing. But the thing down the way, whatever I'm doing now is worth the fact that I'm making things worse for me down the line. So Sir Fang decides to take a complication to move from neutral to positive and earn that minor favor from the queen. The referee decides that the enemy has a spy in the audience, and Sir Fang's interaction with the queen was overheard and reported. Boom. And then, we keep going there, but I think that's fun. I'm curious to think I might write this up. There's some things I probably just want to play around with. But I don't know. What do you think about that trait system? Am I the only one that was kind of... And I know that traits aren't new, tagging and all that stuff, but I like the way it's used in this instance, and I think it can help in some situations in which sometimes the role-playing and or the kind of random roles that can happen in situations might leave some folks wanting. Not necessarily in your game and your table and your players. Might work fine. I will completely admit that I haven't necessarily found a need in my own games to do this, that we'd be able to have kind of a reasonable back and forth and go with something, but sometimes it's also nice to have that bit of structure just to kind of give some guidelines and give folks some rails when they might need it to grip onto and do stuff. And then, of course, having stuff allows you to sort of build things on top of it. What I like about it is the mechanics. In this case, the mechanics, 1, you don't need to really engage with them directly at all. We didn't roll any dice, but we did use the traits to kind of figure out where we were in the situation and then play it out. So I like that. Let me know what you think. If I write it up and plunk it somewhere, I will let you know. Hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed it. It was I always love kind of what would this be? Theory crafting some bits. So some theory crafting for a Thursday. That's all I've got for now, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on. Stay cool if you're in somewhere stupidly hot like me. And game on, everybody. Bye now.